Welcome everyone. Tuesday night show and share. It's December 26th. The holidays are behind us now, at least all but, well, I don't know if it's behind it or ahead, the first of the new year. So yeah, going by very quickly. I'd like to go ahead and get started with some shares. So if you have anything that you are in progress, you want to give a progress report, you've finished, you're absolutely excited about the results, you are midway or maybe finished and it came out absolutely not the way you expected, we take them all. So I want to start off with Thea. She's quilting through the years.
I mean that quite literally. It was a couple of years ago I saw the pattern on a TV show, one of those quilting shows on PBS. It's called a cathedral block window. And it's actually, there's no batting. It's all just folded fabric, so it's heavy enough that it's comfortable in the summer if you like weight on you, but it's not insulated. So, you start with the pieces here. I saw it on the TV show, but then I started making it off of a website with still pictures, and it was kind of ambiguous of how it would turn out. So I started with an 8x8 square of just muslin linen. It's a lightweight cotton. You sew both sides, so it's in half. And then on the next piece, you take this open seam and sew it together, leaving yourself just enough room to turn. So you end up with this, which when you turn it inside out, ends up with a floppy square. You went from 8 inches, and now at this point, it's only 5 1/4. Yeah, I had to measure it because the whole problem was how much fabric did I need, because it keeps decreasing on you. So your next step is you flip your corners in after you iron it. And that's actually the finished size for each quilt square.
How big is that?
That is 3 3/4. And what you end up with, and I'll pass this one around. This was my first sample because it was ambiguous. I couldn't figure out how to put the color in the middle. So this didn't work. This is the way it's supposed to be done, and it gets a your peeled back look. But this is the square I finished, and then you'll put these little ones in and they hide the seams. So I made my first batch of squares, and then I kept sewing them together, draping them over the bed until I could figure out how wide I needed my bedspread. It's 25 squares wide, and I have no idea how long yet because I'm making it for a queen-sized bed. So I got that part done to know how wide it was, bought a literal bolt of fabric so I could have it all the same color and not worrying about color matching. And then I got frustrated and set it aside. Then I cut up the remnants of the first sample, and I got it to the turning point, and I set it all aside. And then about 6 months ago, we had a slow stitching bitch, and Sue cut me up a couple of yards of fabric. So now I have a whole stack of squares. That's my plan for this week, because I'm not at work.
Whoa.
I plan on sewing all of those. This weekend, while I was at my mom's, I actually turned and ironed the first batch that I had set aside. So now I have to attach those to this mess. So it's been in progress for a couple of years now. When you see me around, ask me how the quilt's going so I don't set it aside for another year. But here's the first sample piece if you guys want to see both the failure and the actual success. But this is one of those projects where I definitely need people to keep me accountable. Any questions?
Yes. So as you do your next ones, are you gonna go one strip right up the middle to figure out how long you need, how many squares you need for the length of your bed? Or are you gonna go row by row for the width?
I'm gonna go row by row because it's easier to assemble.
Okay.
Because when you get to this point, you sew this part together and then you sew these seams together. And you can actually do it on a sewing machine if you have them all lined up correctly and pinned. So I can sew the sew the sides together and then pin these and just do one long seam up the side. So I think that's gonna be easier. If I go up the side, then I'm gonna have to make this corner, which is gonna be harder on the sewing machine.
What
Tracy.
is this ribbon dealie?
If you pull it, it turns it into a little bag.
Oh, okay.
And that was just because I wanted to use it for something and not just waste it.
How do you turn the original piece that you sewed with the hem sticking out? How do you said you turn it inside out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture how you do that. I can't.
Okay. I left a little 1-inch opening in each piece.
The secret.
So, and then you just pull your corner through. And eventually the entire thing will turn inside out. And it's great to do in front of the TV. I mean, if you you sew all your squares in a big long chain, and most quilters will know what chain piecing is. And then you just turn everything inside out while you're watching TV, and then take a half an hour to iron the next day and press them all. So there.
And you just leave that unstitched, that little 1-inch and get by?
Because you're folding the tips in on the next step, that's
Oh,
gonna be
yes,
completely
okay.
hidden.
Cool.
So,
I pictured something like
yeah.
that. Like,
Any other questions? Thank you.
So 2 years, you think 2 more ought to be done? 1 more.
I'm hoping not.
1 more, okay. Especially if we all chip in and ask her every week, how's the quilt going? Thank you, Thea. Isaac, how about some electronics, a study?
Hello, friends. I thought that y'all might be mildly interested to see something I was tinkering with last evening. More about the approach than the project itself. Perhaps you've seen sometimes when an artist is doing or wanting to do an ambitious project, like a big painting or a drawing, they may do a study first, you know, like a small scale piece that focuses on the part that they think is maybe the most challenging or interesting of the project. And I like to do that on electronics projects too sometimes, just to fool around with the part of the circuit I'm uncertain about or that I'm having trouble with, rather than prototyping the whole entire thing. And so I've been trying to help a friend with a project that he's struggling with, and I've been having a little bit of a hard time getting it working too. And so I thought I would build a replica of his project, the interesting part, so I could fool with it on my sofa, which is this. Let's see, how do I make that do? Like that, and like this. So what this is, his project involves using a RC transmitter, and this bit here is the RC receiver. So those things you buy off the shelf. And ordinarily you would just hang motors and servos and motor controllers off of this for like an RC car or whatever. But his project is much more fancy and ambitious. It involves an Arduino microcontroller that's talking to this receiver instead. So it's this off-the-shelf hardware allows your computer brain that you program yourself to talk to your transmitter. And the difficulty he was having was that it wasn't doing that, and it wasn't doing that in a sensible way. And so this thing is now actually doing it. I think I can show you that. I added a little screen to mine so that I could see those numbers. They are changing as I move the stick. See, it's showing that channel 1 is changing its value as I move this stick. And now channel 0 is changing its value, right? So you can see data is coming from this thing to my circuit. And I also added this little useless knob that when I turn it, changes that pretend RPM value. And when it changes it, it's actually changing it on this screen here. And so the little Arduino circuit is able to talk back to the transmitter so that your robot or your project can send data back to this thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to witter on about that. None of that is interesting. What I thought that you might be interested in, though, is this bit. Oftentimes when people bring in projects that they're struggling with or working on to the electronics area, you know, you wind up naturally with several different modules and pieces, parts, and they've got cables going in between them, and it's this whole big, fragile, straggly spaghetti mess. And so what I wanted to suggest to you, the way that I like to do these things is, you see I've just got a scrap of cardboard here, and I've tacked down all these pieces using the most wonderful thing, which is this. This is little squares of that snotty glue that they use when they send you credit cards in the mail. You know, it's like it holds it down super good, but then it comes off real clean. So I use this wonderful stuff to stick down all these bits. And so now it's almost like this is all fused into one piece until I'm done with it, and then you just peel it right off. And that makes everything very sturdy and lovely while you're experimenting. You don't have wires coming out left and right and undermining your efforts. The other thing I wanted to mention very briefly to you is that when people are experimenting with electronics, they will often use these. If you've messed with it at all, you probably have one of these. They're super cheap. It's just a little kit of little jumper wires. And these little kits are great because a machine has already cut down these wires and bent them and stripped off the insulator off the ends. And so it's ready to just stick right into your breadboard. But the mistake, if I may so call it, that I think people make is trying to keep these wires nice and neat and straight, because when you see pictures on the internet, that's how they look. Man, hell with these wires. These things are cheap. So what's great about them is you just bend them any way you want to when you're doing this stuff. Show them no respect. And because they're stiff, you can pose them and they won't tangle up and they won't pop out. This other type of wire that I've got going on here is called a DuPont connection. It's got DuPont connectors on both ends, like a male and a female. And for certain kinds of these modules, you'll need those DuPonts, but use as few as you can. And when you do use them, nail them down like I've done here so they don't stick up in this big horrible mess and get caught and get tangled and get goofed up and cause you to waste your life. So that's all. That is what I'm doing. Sir, yes, you, sir.
Where do you get those little snotty things?
I got those at Michael's. Any art supply place carries these nowadays in various formats. They sell them in dots, but what I like is these little squares. They're like ½ inch square.
Which department?
Adhesives. Strongly recommended. Yes, sir.
What does it do?
Sorry?
What does it do?
Well, this is a study, so this is just a part of the overall thing, right? So I'm just studying the part where the transmitter talks back and forth with the circuit. Overall, the project is a remote control tank. It'll be here later this evening. The gentleman's bringing it, and we're going to work on it some more tonight. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The DuPont connectors, are those 10th by 10th inch squares?
Yeah.
That is what they're called?
I believe that's the correct name for that termination. You know, the female goes over the standard pin header,
Right.
and so you need them for that, but that's about all. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, yes?
Just a quick plug based on what you were saying. Ray and Steve just did a breadboarding class. If y'all are interested in prototyping and learning how to breadboard, would highly recommend.
Yeah, so, good point. So the white thing here, this bit of it is the breadboard, and the breadboard exists to allow you to very easily and quickly, temporarily build a circuit and then just literally pull the things out when you're done. So it's making mechanical connections that are fairly stable but entirely temporary. These little breadboards are super handy. We got bunches of those in the electronics area, and we got them in the store too. Okay, thank you.
I like those little sticky things. I think they could be used for more than electronics.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Next up, I have Brad with the lathe hand wheel. Sure, thank you.
Hello, for those of you not familiar with the woodworking shop, there's a two lathes in there, one of which I've been laboring over for I don't know how many months to get up and going. And lathes come like a sewing machine with a hand wheel. They're on the other end, on the left-hand side, so that you can stop it. If you're working on a bowl or and you want to inspect it to see how your tooling has gone so far, it gives you a really nice, easy way to stop it quickly and then rotate it slowly and inspect everything real carefully. So the lathe the one that I donated to my brother, which had never been assembled, he bought it in parts, was lacking the factory hand wheel that came on it. It was a really nice cast iron hand wheel. And one of the problems is it has left-hand threads on that end. On the right-hand end, where you normally would chuck up everything and it would have the drive center, and would be the left-hand end of a spindle if you were turning a leg or something, it's a right-hand thread, and that's a real common. But the left-hand, 8 threads per inch are kind of rare. And the factory cast iron hand wheel came all, machined with it. So I found one online. I got one $100 for it, and it just bugged me, He was parting out the lathe and was trying to make money off of it, which, So I had thought, well, I'll make a wooden hand wheel. And so I got a piece. Mike Bellamy gave me a nice piece of beech, which is real fine grained wood. And I turned it, and then I started thinking, well, how am I going to get it? All the time I'm doing this, I was thinking, how am I going to get it to thread onto the left-hand thread? So Googling around, I finally found this guy who makes chucks. And if you look, this is just a big nut, left-hand thread nut welded onto a flange. And it was like $15. It was like, wow, that's so cool, because generally I like 40 or $50 for one of these one-piece flanges, or chucks. So I bought this, and I used one of those right-hand thread chucks to turn this on the other side of the lathe. And then I thought, well, how am I going to center this thing, make sure it's absolutely center so that all that nice turning and rounding over of this wouldn't be flopping when I got it around the other side. And so then I just, I'm a little slow in the uptake these days, but I just let it in. I took a skew chisel and I carved, while it was turning and while it was chucked up on this side, I kept making this little indentation larger and larger until this chuck fit right in tight. And so after that, I knew I had it, so I kept working on this side a little bit, and I drilled a hole through it. And I did that actually with just a Forstner bit, and I left this on it and just drilled it by hand. Didn't do it on the lathe. But so this is screwed on with some little short 3/4 screws, and then I epoxied this in too with JB Weld, which is my sort of go-to thick, easy 50/50 epoxy when I need small amounts. So this has got one coat. I just put it on a coat of tung oil on it, and that's the stop hand wheel now. We got it for the lathe. So that lathe is pretty much ready to go. So anyway, any questions?
How long did it take to make?
It took, this didn't take very long. The legs on the lathe took a while.
That's great. So you got that for a fraction of the cost.
Yes.
Definitely. Next up, we're going to turn to another area of the shop with some laser engraving. Either 3 stags, which I think a deer, or stages. I'm not sure which. Come and tell us, Russ.
Did I misspell stags? I may have misspelled it on accident. I don't know how I could misspell it.
T then.
Okay, stags. So, yep. So I've been working with this. This is a work in progress here. Let me line it out a little bit, kind of get the full.
Stags.
Yep. So this is a laser engraved from my house, from my laser engraver. This design or the whole cut took about 3 hours. I have 2 others like this, so I've been spending some considerable time on it. But what's interesting is the way this actually cutting everything out. It's called an offset fill. So most times it's a hatch, and then you end up with some small pieces that you have to kind of cut out or just kind of work on stuff. But in this case here, it actually does it by the lines. So it does it kind of like a spiral, like a cinnamon roll almost in a way. And it gets out most of the material, as you can see here. Obviously it chars it. And then on the outsides, not so charred, but obviously on the inside, super, super charged. So that one actually just came out just right before I got here. Now this one here, this is obviously the same picture, but I've covered it over in milk paint. So it's just a black milk paint. It's turning out really nice, with the contrast and stuff like that. So again, just a work in progress that I'm working on. Any questions?
Did you hand paint that, or did you use a mask when you engraved it, or?
No, this is all hand painted in here. So, you can see some spots that need to get filled in and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a simple brush. First one took me probably 30, 45 minutes, but the next one, 15 minutes. I get a little bit faster each time you paint and stuff like that, and you paint more, and you get different brushes and that kind of stuff. So.
CO2 laser?
It's a diode.
Diode.
Yeah, so it's a 24-watt diode laser. I ran it at about 2,500 millimeters a second, 65% power, which is pretty good. It gives me decent, really sharp cuts without just totally charring everything and making it a huge mess. I ran it on some other test pieces at much, a little bit faster, but higher percentage, and it's just like, it tore it up. It made it a lot deeper. This is about a millimeter deep. So. So reclaimed barnwood is poplar. So this is from a barn in Monroe, Tennessee. It's either the city or the county. I don't know which. But it was apparently constructed in the 1940s, and it was a working barn for about 30 or 40 years, and then nothing was really done with it for the last 40, 50 years. So it's super dry wood. I mean, you can obviously see all the cracks, and a lot of the cracks actually happen after I'm laser engraving as well too. The pressure from it is starting to crack, but that's kind of adding to the flavor of it as well.
So the one you used black paint, this one doesn't have paint.
Yeah, this one is painted. This one is not painted.
Okay, are you gonna paint that one?
I will. Yeah, I want to paint them all.
It actually looks really good like it is.
You like it? Okay.
I wanna see them in person.
I mean, the
I
trees
like
look
that
like,
look. It's
Yeah.
very
the
cool.
trees look like birch trees or aspen trees or.
Oh, was it like the veins and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it kind of looks,
In 360.
Especially with the horns, you can see like the peak
yeah,
and then
yeah, like
it
it looks
tapers
really
off.
cool with
Yeah.
the natural.
Stop painting it.
I hear you now. Okay, don't paint it. I hear it. All right, I like that. Okay, cool.
It's nice for a thing. I just think it looks really cool like that.
Yeah, and I don't really know what I want to do as far as like the top. I was thinking like a piece of acrylic with maybe like home or welcome or something like that. That kind of where this will shine through it, just through the letters. And again, it's a work in progress. But it was the main thing was this design actually was an AI art generator that I got, trace image, and then. I didn't really have to do that much to it. I just had to scale it a little bit to the piece, put it on, and then kind of hoped that it actually made it on here, and it did. But yeah, it's, coming out, one step at a time.
I like it.
Thank you.
What AI generator?
Mid-Journey. Yeah, so that's the one I primarily use. I would love to have a class for everyone to show everyone how it works and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of benefits from it. And so I've been looking at Dolly as well too, because that one's free. Maybe we can get some sort of class together and show people how to enhance their art skills and stuff and product design.
What kind of paint do
Milk paint. Yeah, milk paint. It's from a place in Tennessee here. It's about 3 hours west of us. It's called Real Milk Paint. But they do pure tongue oil as well too, which I'll put on this as well too. But the milk paint has like no VOCs. You could pretty much wipe it off if you need to, if it gets somewhere, because it's water based. So it just goes right under the wood really well.
Or milk-based.
Yeah, they do make it. If you were to make it your own, it would be milk based, and that's probably how they make the powder. And then so it's a powder form, and then you mix it 1-to-1. So stays really well. Any other questions? Yes,
Do you have your own laser?
I do.
How big is that one? Are you outsizing us here?
No. The one I have is 16 inches by 16, so it's super small compared to this one. But I also have a CNC as well too. Believe it or not, I just started coming to Knox Makers a year ago, and I have a laser engraver and CNC at my house, and all the work I do is pretty much there except for here. So, you know, it is what it is. So, any other questions? Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes, and I'm sure we have no problems giving you our opinion on whether it should be painted or not. Next up, we have, I don't know which came first, the grill or the weird tool, but we're gonna see both of them.
Hello. Some of you might recognize me, but I come down once a year just to see my family, so I'm sort of a visitor here. I'll just get started though.
From where?
From Illinois, I'm a student there, Champaign. The first thing is, this is the weird tool. It's it's just a wrench with, but it has this weird, it's just like a crescent wrench, but it has this weird like spring-loaded thing on it. I've never seen anything like this before. It was just sitting in my car. I picked it up because I thought it looked funny, but I get passed this around for people to play with. But yeah, I've never seen anything like this, so.
Will it get back to you?
Hopefully. And then the second thing is, so I like to make campfires a lot and cook on them. And so I wanted some way to put a cast iron pot or pan over a campfire. And you can buy stuff that's kind of flimsy. I wanted it to be portable and fit in my car. So I welded together some steel stock into this sort of, it's just a grill basically, but it sits over the fire like this. And so these are all just welded cross members here. And then the hinge is just, there's a cotter pin there. And so I drilled other holes out so I can adjust the height here. If I pull these pins out, I can make it higher or lower depending on how big the fire is. So yeah, this is just a grill that I made a few years ago. You can see it's all black because I've been using it for a while.
Cool. So do you cook very long things?
Not usually. I'll just like, sear some meat in a pan or things like that. Do salmon.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean sure. This is wide so I can do a few pans at the same time. Not like one giant pot sits on the stove.
I thought maybe you had like really long hot dogs.
Yeah. And then it just folds up like this. I really wanted it to fold on top of itself so it can just stay flat. I'm pretty happy with this.
How long did that take you to make?
A few hours just to tack weld all these little pieces in here. I don't weld very often, but it wasn't too bad.
All right, sweet.
Thank you, Evan, and you're more than welcome to come any year you're down here visiting family. Especially if you bring that and make a big pot of chili for us. All right? Well, on to other announcements. We have new members onboarding Thursday at 7 o'clock. For those of you who look at Mattermost, looking at the events channel, you're not going to see much there other than that. But if you look at the website under the events calendar, you're going to see some wood turning classes, the two, and a Tormek sharpening. You'll also see the annual members meeting. That's January 23rd, 6:30 to 9:30. And we also need to have volunteers to do the filters. All right, we have a volunteer for the filters. If you see any trash cans that need emptying, please help out and take it on out to the trash. Any new people here your first night? All right, you can talk to anybody with a badge for a tour if you haven't gotten one already. And whether you're new or not, if you have any questions, you can also talk to the board members.
If there's time, I'll do a late edition show, if you don't mind.
Oh, you have a late show?
I got a late show.
All right, well, let's see. I think we probably have a little bit of time.
All right. Appreciate it. So this is just an update. This is a bowl I showed previously that I had messed up because I drilled a hole through the bottom. And Margaret helped me fix it. I drilled this hole all the way through. And she put in epoxy with a cross-section of a pine cone. So this is a walnut bowl. Ended up looking pretty decent. Any questions?
How did you get it flush after you put it in? Did you like return it or sand it out or what?
Yeah, that was actually a bit difficult. So I sanded it, but the pine cone sanded more than the epoxy, and so it had kind of like a dip in it. And so then I put CA glue over top of it, and that turned out pretty good. I don't know if you can see it, but it got some bubbles in it. So I sanded it with like different grits, different levels of grit, and then I used like wax with a Brillo pad as like the final thing. It's like a wet sanding, and that got it pretty good. So it was like pretty even and looked nice. I think if I did it over again, I'll probably do clear epoxy over the colored epoxy instead of CA glue. The difficulty is like with the CA glue, I put enough in that it like kind of pooled, which was the idea, but then it like hardened to the top and it was like liquid underneath. So that's how the bubbles came in. So if anybody has any ideas on how to do that better, let me know.
Is it hard to get a cross-section of a pine cone? Is that on a bandsaw or how do you do it?
On the sander. Well, I don't know, how did you start it?
I did start with bandsaw
Okay,
and then using.
Bandsaw and sand.
yeah.
That's great, I love it.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the way the resin looked like a storm around that old tree. Right? Great last edition. Okay, so with that, everybody, it's time to go make. Let's get started. Yes.